Hello, and welcome to Anvil Media's online webinar. Today's topic is Foundation for Success, Building Better Digital Marketing Campaigns from the Ground Up. My name is Brett Myers. I'm the paid media strategist at Anvil Media. I've been here about a year, but I've been working in digital marketing for over a decade. So I've seen a lot of different campaigns with a lot of different obstacles and issues. But there's always a way to navigate that, and really it comes down to this. It's finding the foundation of what you're trying to accomplish with a campaign and building up from there. If you have any questions as we're going through the webinar, you can go ahead and chat in the WebEx portal. Be sure to tag everyone so we can see it, and we'll get to those questions at the end. You're also welcome to tweet Paper Cliche or Anvil Media with the hashtag AskAnvil, and we'll bring those questions in as well at the end. So we're going to get started. Like I said, we're be talking about the foundation for success and how it relates to building campaigns. And in the process of that, I'm going to be talking a lot about houses. I think houses are a really good analogy for building a campaign because you can't just piece it together all willy-nilly. You can't just start with the roof and build down. You really have to start with the foundation. Before we get into that though, let's talk a little bit about marketing objectives. So we have some business owners, some marketers here, and a lot of times I see requests like, I want to run a Google search campaign. I want to have remarketing. We'll have someone say, I want my products in shopping ads. I want to see my products up there. Or maybe they're B2B and they want to try LinkedIn ads. All of these requests are, in a lot of ways, like someone asking, I want a house. So if Jenny wants a house, would she be happy with this as a house? That's technically a house. These are also houses. But something tells me that Jenny would not be happy with those houses. And of course, she would not be. So what I find myself asking from different businesses and marketers is, what is it you really want? And a lot of that ties back into their business goals. Ultimately, any marketing objective needs to tie into your specific business goals. And when you get down to the root of it, this marketer A doesn't want a Google search campaign. He wants to build brand awareness. This marketer doesn't want remarketing. He wants to drive retail traffic. This one doesn't want to just have product ads. She wants to increase online sales. And the last guy, he wants to increase the quality of leads. And I'm going to show you in a minute how these are very different from what they think they want when they come and say they want a certain type of campaign on a certain channel. Because all of these are really getting down to our friend Jenny here, who thought she wanted a house. What she really wants is a home that her friends and family will visit. She wants a place she can stay that is welcoming and inviting, and it's a very different picture than just having a house, as we saw before. So what does that look like? What does a house look like? There's some basic components that you want a roof that doesn't leak, you want sturdy walls that won't fall over, keep out the weather, you want windows that are going to let light in, and you want a welcoming front door for your friends to come visit you. So building a campaign is a lot like this because a successful campaign, there are several steps that must be followed in the correct order. And if you don't do that, if you try to build a campaign from the top down, if you just decide you want to do a search campaign without considering what the point of that campaign is, your campaigns are going to collapse. What are the correct steps to build a campaign that's going to be successful? As I mentioned at the top, it really starts with the foundation. And we're going to walk through all these steps building up from there. But first, let's talk about what foundation means for a campaign. You do not want to build a campaign without a foundation because this is what it's going to happen to. It's going to sink. That's why you have to start from that point before you decide what kind of channels you want, what your ads are going to look like, what your budget is. You first have to determine what your foundation is. And that goes back to your business goals. The foundation of your campaign is the content with which you achieve your business goals. So let's look at some of these business goals that we drilled down to. This marketer thought she wanted shopping ads, and she really wants to increase online sales. So let's look her business is Sandy sells seaside seashell jewelry. I knew that was going to be a tongue twister, and I did that to myself. So her goal is that she wants to increase online sales. So in Sandy's mind, she wants to do that by taking consumers to her product pages and thinks that shopping ads are going to do that. And they may be a good source for that. But if her method for achieving her business goal is taking consumers to her product pages, the outcome of that is just going to be getting visitors to product pages. And getting visitors to product pages isn't necessarily going to increase her online sales. So if she wants to actually increase her online sales, she needs to get visitors to purchase the products online, not just get them to the product pages. And if her ideal outcome is getting people to purchase those products, then her method needs to tie into that. And the way she can do that isn't just by taking traffic there, it's by showing the consumers that they're receiving quality and value from a reliable company. And all that means is that ultimately her content needs to provide the user with that experience. Her content has to present the consumer with a shopping experience that exudes quality and value while building trust in her company. And you can see how that ties back into actually increasing online sales, because she's not just driving traffic, she's creating an experience with her content from point A to point B. Let's look at another example. We have Scott here who wants to increase the quality of leads. And Scott owns a slick software startup company. And he thinks that's going to happen if he runs LinkedIn ads and he offers a white paper on the emerging technology that his startup is built around. But again, as with Sandy, the only thing that's going to do if you're just focusing on offering a white paper is get people to download a PDF that talks about this new kind of software. But that isn't really the same as him wanting to actually get quality leads. He may get some email addresses. He may get his article shared somewhere if it's really good. But that's not what his goal is for his business. What his goal is, the outcome that he needs to tie back into, is getting a key decision maker interested in learning more about Scott's software. Not the technology, but Scott's software in particular. And the only way he's going to do that is by showing those decision makers why his software, again, not any software, not the technology, but his software in particular will improve the productivity of their business. Because ultimately, any business doesn't care about just the technological trends. They want to know how it's going to improve their bottom line. They're going to want to know how they can increase the productivity of their team, improve their product, and ultimately, Scott, whatever content Scott is putting together, needs to show those decision makers why his software will improve their productivity. So once you've determined that, once you've dug down and tried to understand how the content you're creating is going to directly tie into an experience that achieves your business goals, then you have the foundation of your campaign. And everything needs to be built around that. And we're going to get into the nuances of that in the next steps. Step 2 are building your walls. In campaign terms, the walls are essentially finding your audience. It's how are you going to reach your audience? But before you find them, you need to know who your audience is. And a lot of times I hear clients, I hear different businesses who think they know really well who their target audience is. And whenever they say that very confidently about who their target audience is, I generally see this. I see it sounds good, it looks good, but basically it's a facade. There's not the depth there. There's not the true understanding of who their target audience is. So how do you define your audience? In a lot of ways, creating a campaign is like a floor plan for your house. And you want to fit as much of your audience in as you can. If you come in and say, I just want to do LinkedIn ads, I want to do a search campaign, what you're doing is kind of an out-of-the-box approach. And you're going to get some of your audience, but you're going to leave a lot of them out in the cold. What you really want to do is build your campaign around your audience, where they are, who they are. And it may look, would be a very weird looking house, but remember you're building a campaign for them. You're not building a campaign and expecting them to come to you. So it's really important to look at where your audience is and who they are, and use that to build the walls, essentially, of your campaign. There's a couple ways to define your audience. Probably one of the best is to engage in customer research. But that can be very time-consuming. It can be very expensive. It's worth the investment if you can do it, but it's not always an option. Another way is to test some small campaigns and kind of gauge reach and engagement. Just throw some stuff at the wall and see what sticks, and then use that to build bigger, broader, more impactful campaigns. Again, though, that's expensive and time-consuming. If you need to get started right away and you really want to have an understanding of your audience, the best place to start is from your existing site visitors. specifically, you want to look at your new site visitors more than anything, but also look at the people who are engaging with your content the most. And one of the best ways to do that is in Google Analytics. You already, just at a very top level, without drilling down, you can start to see some information, not just your age ranges that interact with your site the most, your genders, your geographic locations down to the city level. But you can see what devices they're using to get there, whether it's mobile or desktop, Apple, Android. You start to see a lot of very top level things, but you can even dig deeper in. For this client already, I can see that a lot of their site visitors, their most engaged site visitors, are really into movies and music and celebrity news. They're photographers, they're health and fitness buffs. They're in market for post-secondary education and employment. They like to travel. They're looking for real estate and investment services. There's a lot of information that I can start to paint a picture from just based on your existing audience and start to understand where those people are. Once you define your audience, you can start to find them. There's a lot of different channels to choose from, and it's very difficult to parse which ones are going to be the right choice for you. But there's a few things you want to consider when you're looking at what channels you would want to approach to find the core of your audience. So one of those things is how people use each platform. Are they mostly on mobile? Are they on desktop? How much time are they spending on it? What are they doing on it? And even more importantly is why people use each platform. You don't want to, if you're B2B, you might not have as much impact when someone's looking at, scrolling through their Instagram feed and looking at pictures of cute puppies or travel destinations. On the other hand, you wouldn't want to be a travel company and try to maybe be on LinkedIn when people are trying to, build their career and interact and build their network. So it's really important to consider what frame of mind someone is on when they're on each of these different channels and platforms. Are they looking for something, or are they just there and you need to pull them away? And that ties into what incentives you need to be offering. Again, if someone is on, say, Google search and they're looking for what you're offering, it's a little less barrier to bring them into your site and start that process. But if you're on Facebook and you're scrolling through fake news and your friend's baby pictures, you might need to approach that audience differently than you would on Google search and give them a little more reason to stop what they're doing, what they want to be doing, and start doing what you want them to be doing, which is ultimately taking the next steps to achieve your business goal. You also want to consider the cost of advertising on each platform. LinkedIn is very good, especially for B2B, because it's very targeted for job roles that you can't get on Facebook and Twitter. It's also very expensive. So weighing all of these options together is really important to help kind of find your audience. But the most important thing, the absolute most important thing that you want to consider when you're choosing what channels to build your campaign around is what platform allows you to best present your content. Because again, your content is your foundation. And if you can't provide that experience to them that's going to achieve your business goals, then that channel is ultimately not right for you. So you really have to think about how your content is going to be presented, whether it's on Facebook, Google search, Bing, Instagram, whatever. How is your content going to be presented? Is it the right space for it? Does it blend in and start that experience with your audience that you need to achieve your business goals? So once you have defined and found your audience, you can build your campaign around your audience and content. The next step is the fun part. It gets a little more decorative, and it starts with the windows. Your campaign windows are essentially how are your ads going to best present your brand and product. This is your first impression for the majority of the time, your first impression to your audience of who you are and what you have to offer. So because that's your first impression, you really need to find a good balance for what you're showing to them. If you think about if you've approached someone's home and there weren't any windows, it tends to be very intimidating, or you're kind of sketches you out because you can't see, there's not any transparency there. You don't have an idea of what kind of place you're walking into. In a lot of ways, your ads are achieving the same thing. So there's a lot of mistakes that people make in creating their ads, and it's usually one of two buckets. They usually will either have way too many ad variations or too many different messages, and that kind of leaves the audience confused and disoriented. As this Clay fella on the left, he doesn't know what is even being offered because he's seen too many conflicting ideas and messages. The other mistake I see a lot of marketers make is having too few ads or too little information, and a lot of times that ends up being just very, just very vague messaging, buzzwords, not really saying anything about what makes that brand and that product or service unique and how it can help the person who's looking for it. Ideally, what you want your ads to be are kind of very visually represented by this photo. You want something that's intriguing enough that someone wants to stop and peek in and ultimately take the next action. You can do that by being, first and foremost, very clear and transparent with who you are and what you're offering. This is going to kind of let your, a little bit of your brand personality out. You want to have your ads be intriguing and exciting as well to kind of catch their attention, and you don't want to lay everything on the table because you do want to keep that level of intrigue, but give them just enough of a taste of what you're offering that they're going to want to click through and take the next step. And you don't want them to be overly showy. That kind of ties into the intriguing thing too. You just want enough to where, like this woman here, she sees something she's interested in and she's compelled to look closer and take the next step. So to wrap that up, you're showing your audience who you are and what you have to offer and enticing them to take action. The next step of that ties into taking that action, and that is essentially the front door. The front door is your call to action. It's how you're inviting your audience to take the next step. It's setting expectations for what that interaction is going to be. So the way you can do that is by the same way you would invite people into your home, is be welcoming. You want to set that expectation and invite people to your site and set very clear expectations for what actions they need to take. If you don't have a CTA in your ad, or if it's confusing or unclear, it's a lot like this door here that doesn't have a handle. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to open this door. I'm intrigued. I want to go through the door, but you're not giving me a doorknob to turn and enter that house. And if you don't have a really strong CTA, it's basically like having a door with no doorknob. It needs to be very clear and evident, and again, sets expectations for the next step, not just clicking on the ad, but what that visitor is expected to do once they get to your site. The last piece of it is of being welcoming with your ads is, if you invite guests over to your house, most of the time you're going to offer them something to eat or a beverage. You're going to make them feel special. You're going to make them feel welcome, make them want to come back. And you need to approach your site visitors much in the same way, especially first-time site visitor. Clean up the place. You offer them something. You make them feel at home. And you can do that by offering some incentives. They don't necessarily have to be discounts or promo codes. Sometimes it can just be really good information or really good user experience. But you need to offer something to your visitors that is going to make them feel like they belong there, like they made the right choice by clicking on your ad. To recap that, you create ads that illuminate your brand and provide a clear course of action. The final piece of the puzzle is very important, and that is the roof. Now, the roof of your campaign is essentially just your campaign budget. There's a couple interesting things about a roof, though. A roof doesn't just keep out the weather and kind of keep your house warm in the winter. It also helps the house breathe and ventilate. And in a lot of ways, your campaign needs to be able to breathe and have some flexibility. If you have the same budget month over month, during the entire course of the year, and you have very strong seasonal trends, then you're essentially having a very cold, empty house at some points in the month where people aren't looking for your product, and then you're really not letting your campaign perform when they are. So you need to have some flexibility and be able to make adjustments and not be locked into a budget that is unchanging. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a good kind of rule of thumb to determine what your campaign budget should be. And again, this goes back to your business goals. You start with your business goal and determine how many sales or leads you would consider a success for that business goal. Now, obviously, I mean, you know, 1 or 2 isn't going to be worth your time even, but you also can't, you know, set unrealistic expectations and get like 1,000 leads a month or something if that's not the size of your business. But determine what an actual number would consider a success that you have met your business goal for that time period. Next, you would take that number and you will divide it by the average conversion rate for your new site visitors, and specifically your new site visitors. Because those are going to be the best representation of your people who are experiencing this for the first time. So you take your number of sales and leads that you consider a success, and divide that number by your conversion rate, and next you multiply that number by the average cost per click or cost per 1,000 impressions of each channel you're wanting to use. And which of those is going to depend on the purpose on your business goals. So essentially that equation looks like this: desired converting visitors divided by average click-through rate. Take that number and times it by your average cost per click, and you're going to roughly have what your campaign budget should be, or at least a place to start. And the place to start is an important piece of it, because the other thing that people forget about campaign budgets and roofs is that if you grow your house, if you add a new wing to your home or kind of just redesign the whole thing, you have to expand the roof to cover it. You can't just leave the same roof and grow your house. So in the same aspect, don't be afraid to raise the roof on your campaign budget as your campaign grows and starts to succeed. If you leave it eternally capped, you're really not ultimately achieving your business goals, because you're leaving a lot on the table. So those are the 4 key steps of building a campaign, starting with your foundation, understanding how to present your business in a way that's going to achieve your goals, building your campaign around your audience and not vice versa, creating ads that give that best first impression and really illuminate your brand, make the visitor feel very welcome, and then letting your campaign breathe and raising your budget as it grows and succeeds. So to recap all this, if you start from the ground up, you start from your foundation, this is going to allow you to identify the best ways to present your product or service, identify your audience and the best ways to reach them, present your brand and offerings in a way that encourages desired actions, and ultimately understand how to structure your budget to meet your goals. There is one more really important thing that people forget, even with houses, is you don't just build your house and set it and forget it. There is always maintenance to be done, and that's true of campaigns too. You want to make sure to plan and keep things fresh, and kind of go through this process and kind of recheck where you are over the course of your campaign's timeline. Luckily, all of this is something that Anvil can help you out with. So if you have any questions, as I mentioned, you can chat in the WebEx, or you can tweet Anvil Media or Paper Cliché with the hashtag AskAnvil, and we will try to address those questions as best we can. Thank you so much for sitting through this presentation. I hope you got some good insights, and I hope we can kind of drill down and have some questions to ask. So the question was, what strategies do you recommend for campaign budget management? And a lot of times I do work with clients that have a very restricted budget, which can be frustrating. It definitely creates more of a challenge. But at Anvil, our motto is challenge accepted. Some of the strategies I use to work with very restricted budgets is to get very granular. The more granular you get, the more you can really find ways to maximize the value of your campaigns. A lot of times I'll see, when we do an audit, I'll look at a campaign and there's a bunch of very different keywords in one campaign or one ad group. And more often than not, like only 2 or 3 of those keywords are eating up almost the entire campaign budget. And we really then have no idea how those other keywords would have performed if it had been organized differently. So with a limited budget, you want to split out campaigns by topic and have very, very tightly correlated ad groups. So you can see how each of those performs and give them some room to compete on the same level rather than just those 3 or 4 keywords that take up the most of your budget. You also can, if even within one ad group, if it's eating up most of the budget, you can split that out into another campaign. Basically, you're trying to just shuffle around to identify what works, but also make sure you're giving other campaigns and other terms the opportunity to perform and drive enough statistically significant traffic that you can decide if those are bringing you value and meeting your business goals. The one caveat I would say to that, though, is you don't want to get so granular that each campaign budget is capped out at just a few clicks a day. Sometimes you do just need to start with one at a time and maybe see if that works and then flip to another campaign. Ultimately, if you're only getting like a few clicks a day and your budget's getting capped, you're never going to know if those few clicks or the next few clicks would have resulted in your conversions or whatever your business goal is. So there is sort of a limit to how granular you can get with a limited budget. But ultimately, doing that and also starting out with very minimal bids and working your way up to find the kind of the sweet spot for where you can get the right amount of traffic, and utilizing RLSAs, or marketing lists for search ads, as increasing your bid adjustments on those, geo-targeting, demographic bid adjustments. There's a lot of ways you can start kind of at a baseline and start to really get the most out of your budget by just making incremental adjustments from multiple angles. Okay, so the question was, what tools do we use to determine how to build out a search campaign? Some of the top level ones would be Google has a really great keyword planner that'll kind of give you some idea of what people actively search for and how much those bids are, how strong the competition is. That's a really useful tool. I also like looking at Google Trends just to see where seasonality is or what trends are rising and becoming more popular than others. And then there's dozens of different kind of keyword tools out there, from like SEMrush to SpyFu. All of those give you a pretty good lay of the land to start with. But I would say I think the most invaluable tool that I use isn't really a tool at all, but it's just a process or way of thinking, and that is going through the search experience as if I was a user. By actively searching, trying to find the product that I'm wanting to build a campaign around, I get to experience it from the audience's shoes, and I get to see what the competitors are like, what messaging is used there, what incentives, what my first impression of those brands are, and first impressions of the landing pages. And I also find it really helpful to look at the organic listings as well, because you got to remember that the organic listings on a search page are there because they are the most relevant to your search query. Google is very, very good about how it ranks content based on its relevancy to what you're searching for. So looking at the terminology and the messaging and the content there is going to give you a really good idea of what people tend to find useful when they search for that term, and really opens it up to expanding what terms you're going to be looking at. But most importantly, like how to approach those people. That's one thing I probably should have mentioned in the kind of the finding and defining your audience, is essentially using organic as a way to really understand what is relevant to people in those search terms. That's a good question. So I actually wrote an article about this recently, about how paid and SEO work together hand in hand. And if you were using paid to kind of build up your SEO, then there is maybe at some point where you will want to do that. And it really depends on a lot of things. So if it's more branded and you don't have any brand competition, once you have, I'd say, at least the top 3 or 4 organic rankings over a significant period of time, because those do fluctuate a little bit, and you don't want to say, I got number 1, turn off paid campaigns, and you see your SEO rank plummet the next month. So I'd say when you have a pretty good consistent presence in organic, I would test. I wouldn't just assume. I would test turning off campaigns for about a month or so to see if you can maintain that organically. But it's always important to keep an eye on if ads do start creeping in. Anytime Google sees an opportunity to show an ad and make their revenue, they're going to do that. So I'd at least keep those on standby. There's also scenarios, even when there isn't paid competition on your organic listings on your SERPs, that you may want to keep paid ads, at least at a very minimal bid. You can just have ads running for like 5 cents if there's no other competition there. And that is because you can better craft the messaging in your paid ads. If a lot of your organic content is going to be very top level stuff, talking about those search terms that you most want to rank for. But it gets a little bit harder to, if you have new content, say if you have a new article, if you have a upcoming sale, if you have something where you want to just kind of keep your messaging more fresh, it's still worth having paid ads in addition to your organic listings, even if there isn't really any competition there, because it gives people different looks at your business and what you're offering. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Again, be sure to go to anvilmediainc.com and sign up for our May 23rd webinar. It's Gain Local Online Visibility in 2018 and Beyond. It'll be a great look at SEO options, and you won't regret it. Thank you so much for joining, and take care.